Hey, we've got one more team here in the AFC West that we've got to get to, and it is the Denver Broncos. It's a team that, man, I know that Broncos fans are very, very excited about. A lot of people around the league are picking them as their sleeper team to win this division, to make some noise in the playoffs, and I think the reason for that is because, man, they got a damn good defense. This could be the best defense in the NFL this upcoming season. In a lot of ways, they were one of the best defenses in the NFL last year, and I feel like they're only getting better. Sean Payton is his third year as the head coach here for the Broncos. Their projected win total, 8.8. So just under 9 wins that we have here. They were 10-7 last year, third in the AFC West. They lost in that AFC wildcard round. I don't think they were ready for that deep playoff run yet, and we can get into a little bit of that. You see that offensive grade, 21st in the NFL for as good as a year I think Bo Nix had as a rookie last year. It wasn't a super explosive offense. They didn't have a lot of passing weapons that they could really rely on beyond Courtland Sutton, but that defensive grade, you see that 10th overall in the NFL. I think we're jumping into the top 5, not just in the overall category, but a lot of other categories as well. Coverage grade, run defense, pass rush. I think this team is going to be fantastic. And then, of course, you see the projected win totals there as well. Talk to me about the biggest strength of this team, how bullish you are on the Denver Broncos this upcoming season.
Yeah, listen, and then the defense rightfully gets a lot of credit. Pat Surtain out there as a defensive player of the year. I love the additions of Dre Greenlaw and Talanoa Hufanga and Jahdae Barron. Need him to play well as a rookie. But you know what? When you look at this team, and I think especially this offense, I think the heart and soul of it last year was their offensive line. When you look at Bowles, Powers, Wattenberg, Miners, and McGlinchey, they had the highest pass blocking grade in the league. Their offensive line was only held responsible for a 16.2% pressure rate. That was the best in the league. And the fourth best knockdown rate, combined hits and sacks on their quarterback last year. I don't think this offensive line gets enough credit. I mean, when you talk about the environment, Bo Nix came from, at Oregon, the best pass blocking team in the country, in college football his last season. He walks into the NFL, and he goes to the best pass blocking team in the NFL last year, and you wonder why he was so good and brought him to the playoffs and was in the Rookie of the Year race and allowed to do all the things he could do. This offensive line is really, really darn good. Quinn Miners at right guard is a superstar. Garrett Bowles is one of the most underrated tackles in the league. Mike McGlinchey's been a great starter for a long time. I think, to me, and I know the defenses, I have the potential on this defense. I have no question about. We just have some kind of if they happen sort of things. If Hufanga can bounce back, if Dre Greenlaw is healthy, if the CB2 spot is filled by Barron, or if he's playing the McDuffie inside-outside role or whatever. But this offensive line, I have no questions about. This is one of the elite offensive lines in football. We talk a lot about Philadelphia, Atlanta, Detroit, Indianapolis, some of the best O-lines in football. We need to make a habit of talking about Denver in that light, because they're the ones who really created the room for this offense to operate under Sean Payton with Bo Nix, a rookie quarterback back there. I don't think they get enough credit. I actually think right now that is the most proven, consistently great part of this football team.
No, they're awesome. And anytime that you get to boast the trenches as an area that is not only the strength of your team, but is one of the best areas in the NFL, you feel really, really good about that. You mentioned the biggest weakness for this team is the receiver depth. Now, I'm curious. Do you feel better about that this preseason? Because it feels like some guys are really stepping up. Pat Bryant, Troy Franklin, some guys are really stepping up there at the receiver room for the Broncos. Do you feel better about that, labeling that the biggest weakness that you had there in your article?
Better. I mean, this team is really one without a ton of major kryptonite weaknesses. If I was picking one at the very end of last year, I probably would have said linebacker, but I feel a lot better about that with Dre Greenlaw and Alex Singleton if they're both healthy. This is one where the depth of it, when you look at it in that sense, I have a lot of guys I kind of like, right? We kind of like Marvin Mims, and he makes the occasional explosive. Devon Vele, I think, was a lot better than we projected last year. Franklin, they adding Evan Ingram to a tight end room that was dead last in receiving. I feel better about it than I did going into last year. I really want to know, aside from Courtland Sutton, which one of those guys is really number 2? Who is the guy? Because this is a team that didn't really have any big receiving totals out of anybody else. Who's the guy that's going to jump into that 800, 900, maybe even 1,000-yard range for Bo Nix and be that true second target to complement Courtland Sutton, right? I need to know who that is, and I really need a good tight end season out of Evan Ingram, because this team just got nothing out of their tight ends last year. So I feel better about it than I did when the season ended last year. I feel good about what we just saw from Bryant and from Franklin in this last preseason game, but I just want to see who. That's the big thing for me now. The depth and the number of options isn't as big an issue. I want to know who's going to be that true number 2 guy next to Courtland Sutton.
Yeah, and I think that you said that appropriately, or at least that's certainly how I would have said it as well. There's not a lot of weaknesses on this team. I mean, maybe you could look at the running back room, depending on how much faith you have in R.J. Harvey. They signed J.K. Dobbins as well. They have Julian McLaughlin. They have Archer Estime. I mean, to some people, those names, to NFL SC fans, that's one of the best running back rooms in the NFL. But, for some people out there, they might say that might be the biggest weakness. But it really is a team that just doesn't have a lot of glaring holes. I feel like the floor for this team every single week should be pretty dang high. They should have the ability to take on every single team on their schedule and do so pretty confidently. There's just not a lot of weaknesses that you can attack week in and week out. So I think that going about that is the right conversation there. Let's talk about Bo Nix. Nix is a rookie last season, very polarizing throughout the draft season. Came in, I thought played really well as a rookie. I felt I was higher on Bo Nix than a lot of draft analysts, and so I felt like what I was seeing with him with the Broncos was a lot of what we saw at Oregon, really over the last 2 years. Certainly his last year that he was there with the Ducks was his most proficient year. But, I mean, what we saw from him last year was, I thought, great. It was a very high floor that we saw from the rookie getting to acclimate to the NFL as a first-time starter and an early starter at that. 76.4 overall PFF grade in 2024, 1.4 turnover-worthy play rate from week 4 on. It was the best in the league over that span. That is the type of Bo Nix that we saw at Oregon. Now, certainly, year 2, year 3, year 4 of his rookie contract here, you want to see the turnover-worthy play. Anytime that you crank up the big-time throw rate, the turnover-worthy play rate is probably going to go up a little. But what you want is you want it somewhere around, 1.5% to 2% of a turnover-worthy play rate is fantastic. Even like 2 to 2.5 is totally fine if you can get that big-time throw rate into the 4% range, 5% range, something like that. 6 and above, I mean, obviously you're talking about having an incredible season. But for Bo Nix, I thought it was the exact type of year that you would want to see from that player, given how his scouting report read coming out of Oregon. So I thought it looked great from Bo. What are you expecting from him this upcoming season?
I think the big thing with Bo and what makes him a solid NFL quarterback at the least is that much like Drew Brees, especially late in his career, obviously with Sean Payton had, Bo Nix proved last year he doesn't beat himself. He didn't beat himself at Oregon. He rarely put the ball in danger. Last year, like you mentioned, after the first 3 weeks, had to get acclimated, had the best turnover-worthy play rate in the NFL, and I thought he did do a good job. There was a lot of people who questioned his ability to throw the ball deep down the field. He had the 8th best deep passing grade in the league last year, and that's with a receiving core, again, that was the 5th lowest graded in the NFL. He's hitting Cortland Sutton. We saw the big shot against the Bengals. He hit to Marvin Mims that I don't think people even thought he had that capability in his arm, so he can sling it deep downfield, no question. If they're getting guys open, if Sean Payton can call them open, but I think that's the biggest thing you start with Bo Nix is he's not going to beat himself. He's very rarely going to go out there and make boneheaded mistakes, especially repeatedly, right? Because even if he does, Sean Payton's going to get on him, and I think we knew when he was drafted, if there's any coach that Bo Nix needs to be with, it's Sean Payton. It just made way too much sense. He took advantage. The one flaw that I actually have is that sometimes he didn't really have this at Oregon, so I expect this average time to throw to come down, but he was held responsible for more pressure at a higher rate. 24% of his pressures he was held at least partially responsible for. That was the highest rate of any starter in the league. So it's funny. The one thing I expected was for Bo Nix to get rid of the ball quickly last year, and his average time to throw was near 3 seconds. I think that could come down in year 2, being more comfortable in this offense, and you could see him pressured even less than he was last year, because a lot of times it was just him holding the ball too long, and he can make plays with his legs outside the pocket too. But no, you look at Bo Nix again, I think that's the biggest thing. He gives you such a high floor because he doesn't beat himself, and that's why Sean Payton drafted him in the first place.
Defensive line you feel good about. I mean, Zach Allen, ton of pressures last season. Very versatile player. Very happy with him. Obviously, they give him big money this offseason for a reason. You got John Franklin Meyer as well. DJ Jones in that mix. I like Savion Jones. I think the rookie that they drafted, I think fits exactly what they want to do on that odd front defense. They added Dre Greenlaw, you mentioned. They've got Nick Bonito. They've got Drew Sanders. They've got Jonathan Cooper. They've got so many guys on that team that I feel like they could go to. Jonah Ellis as well. I forgot they also have him on this team. Pretty good roster there. Quay Robinson is a depth piece that they drafted to be that outside linebacker type. And then the secondary, I feel like you got to feel really good about the secondary, not just the starters, but the depth. So I'll sort of throw it to you, to whoever you want to talk about, whether it's Surtain, whether it's Jade Barron, but they added Talanoa Hufanga. They've got Riley Moss as well, Chris Abrams-Drain, Jaquan McMillan. I mean, they've got a lot of players, in my opinion, in this secondary to not only make for a really good starting lineup, but also a deep one that you feel good about moving these guys around. And even if one of them, goes down with a little short-term injury with certainly can happen during the NFL season. I think you feel pretty good about where the Broncos are at in their secondary.
I mean, you've got star power. You've got Patrick Surtain, the reigning Defensive Player of the Year, the most valuable non-quarterback in football last year, according to PFF wins above replacement. Right? Obviously, had his best season last year. He's a fantastic football player. One of the top. I mean, honestly, most people now at this point, when it's talking about the best corner in football, it's Sauce Gardner, it's Patrick Surtain. Those are the top two, right? So you've got a superstar at corner. You've got an underrated superstar at free safety in Brandon Jones, who I think could be even better this year with Talanoa Hufanga playing in the box. Those two guys complement each other really well back there. And then you look at this stable of corners that you have. You have 5 corners in that room, including Surtain, that you feel pretty good at least putting out on a football field. Riley Moss did some good work last year. Jaquan McMillan can play in the slot. I really like Chris Abrams-Drain, the second-year man out of Missouri. And then Jahdae Barron was the most valuable defensive player in college football last year, had the best coverage grade in the Power 4 last year at Texas. He can play inside or outside, or I would even expect eventually he's going to do the same things as Trent McDuffie, where he's outside in base and inside in nickel. I think he can do so many things for you with his zone coverage prowess, with the aggressiveness, with the tackling. Even though he's undersized, he's a great tackler. I mean, you got a deep stable of corners. You got 2 safeties that complement each other really, really well. Still have P.J. Locke back there as a backup who's had plenty of starting experience, played a lot last year. So this secondary has the potential to be one of the best in football. And then when you complement it with that deep defensive line that you talked about, and maybe better coverage from their linebackers, especially if Greenlaw's healthy, this is a problem. Throwing on this team is going to be a problem if they're healthy.
The bet that we have here for the Denver Broncos from Ben Lindsay, Bo Nix under 3,550.5 passing yards. Hater. It's minus money. It's minus 110. Now, here's what Ben has to say about it. Bo Nix was 6th in the NFL in passing attempts as a rookie in 2024, but that was with a run game that really struggled to get much of anything going. He said, I expect Sean Payton will attempt to show more balance this season, given the additions of R.J. Harvey and J.K. Dobbins at running back. PFF projects Nix at 3,432 passing yards, which is below that line across those 17 games. I feel like that's totally fair, right? I mean, like minus 110, that's, close to even money, basically. And so it's a little bit of a coin flip, but he's saying that there's a little bit of an edge because of the new running back talent wanting to be a little bit more balanced. And I could certainly agree with that logic there. For as much as I think the Bo Nix is still going to be good. Maybe he'll up the big time throws, or the big time throw percentage a little bit. I don't think that he's going to be like this prolific 4,000 yard passer. If he is, if he is that, I think the Broncos win the division, right? I mean, like if they're having that sort of an output in the passing game with even the receivers that they have, and then you think the running game is getting a little bit better, you're talking about a team that's probably going to win the division with the defense that they have. So this way, I can understand the projection of right around 3,500 passing yards for Bo Nix. What do you think about this one?
I think it's reasonable. There's a road where he gets over this, and I think it involves somebody else stepping up at receiver besides Courtland Sutton, and we'll see the impact that Evan Ingram has if he can play the full 17 games. But also, I think Sean Payton's going to want to be even more balanced than they were last year. I think that's why he drafted R.J. Harvey so high. And I think Harvey, honestly, I know there's some of the obvious guys we've talked about for Offensive Rookie of the Year. You talk about Ginty and maybe Cam Ward, Tedero, and McMillan, but I think Harvey's a really good sleeper for that. I know it's a relatively deep room of running backs, but I think they want Harvey to take over this backfield. And again, it's a fantastic offensive line he's running behind. He's got the ability to get an explosive run on any play. So, I think it's a tough number. I absolutely understand the logic. If they're going to be more balanced and stay conservative in the passing game, and the receiving core, it has to be better. Again, it was 28th in the league in receiving grade last year. If they're not significantly better than that, it's going to be a little bit harder for Bo Nix to get over that 35-50.
Like I said, if he's over 4,000, close to 4,000, over 4,000, man, we're talking about a damn good year from the Denver Broncos. There we go. All 14